We were at Soybean Management Field Days outside of Chapman, Nebraska, joined now by Jeff Peterson, Heartland Farm Partners. And we're going to talk markets. And Jeff, for several years you presented these meetings, and boy, this year's a challenge. You're talking about what I think everybody wants to know: where are these soybean markets heading?
You know, what's been very, optimistic, I guess, if you can look at it, is beans have held up very well in here. This jury's still out, Ken, actually. We're going to have to see on how these yields turn out. We think we're finding a base here. We think we can find a base of support. Now, I think the market can go higher from there. The only thing that would happen that would cause us to go lower, if we'd be surprised and this bean crop would be 1 to 2 bushels bigger, then we couldn't rule out the thought that we'd go about another $1 to $1.50 lower. But we don't think that's going to happen.
Is it time to price more of those? I mean, it just seems like as you talk with guys in the countryside, there's just not a whole lot of confidence as far as moving forward. You know, they hear the elevators. The elevators still have a lot of last year's crop in it, and looking right now, all indications are from what we see, it's going to be a near, if not a near record corn crop and a near record soybean crop. So there's going to have an awful lot of inventory.
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of inventory, and that's something we have to start thinking about. So let's break it apart in 2 pieces. For that individual who says, you know what, I can store those beans on the farm, then we'd say let's go ahead and hold off here and let's wait. We think we'll get some better opportunities to sell later. For that individual that needs to take them into town, the situation is going to be once they get into town, what are their choices? If they've got some very reasonable delayed pricing or have the ability to even put it on a basis contract to hang on to it for a while, we think that'd be worth doing that to go ahead and prolong that decision a little further down the road. But if they're going to have to sell it by harvest, okay, no choices, then I'd say what we're going to have to do is we're going to have to use any little bounce we get in here to get those beans sold so that we can go ahead and move them into town and have room at harvest. Now, the thing I want to remind everybody of, there is going to be a lot of bushels out there. And so make sure that they do know if they're going into town, they need to know and have a place for those bushels. So make arrangements ahead of time. Don't wait till the last minute this year.
Give us an update on China. Are we on again, off again as we look at our biggest market? Where are they at in this big scheme?
Yeah, you know what? Right now they're selling off some stocks, which everybody knows about. Overall, though, the demand appears to be pretty good yet, and I guess our forecast going forward is we think the demand will stay strong there. We're keeping a close eye on what they do with these reserve beans. They've got about 3 million metric tons they'd like to sell, and they are getting some of those sold, and those are getting sold at levels below the market. That's about 120 million bushels worth. What worries us a little bit is the fact they probably aren't going to come back and buy beans to fill the reserve back with them. So we're going to have to see if that does put a little bit of damper on the demand side. But overall, I think we're going to count on China having a good year of demand yet going forward this next year.
So as you talk to producers here, what are you giving them some good news?
Yeah, I think the thing is right now we do think that best way we can describe it is that there's enough crop out there to keep a lid on the price, but what we have to remember is that it also still is enough bushels, the bushel stocks are low enough, still the fact that if we had a weather problem in either the U.S. next year, South America, Ukraine, we could still see these markets bounce back higher later down the road, and that's something I think we got to remain optimistic about.
All right, Jeff, thanks for the update. Good to see you.
Thank you.
Jeff Peterson, Heartland Farm Partners, has joined us with a market update on those soybeans. Near Chapman, Nebraska, I'm Ken Rogers.